Welcome to the Week 3 Fantasy Football Preview. This is the BA Sports Podcast. And Tua just threw the interception with 3 minutes and 20 seconds left behind me. The Dolphins are looking like they're going to 0-3. And wow, you really just can't make that up. A terrible throw by Tua on that play. And it looks like the Bills should hold on to beat the Dolphins unless they blow this somehow. So today in the week 3 fantasy football preview, we are going to go into starts, sits, sleepers, and busts. And then we're going to go through daily fantasy targets and fades. And we might even make a lineup like we did last week. Then we're going to go around the league with rapid game hits of all the games and give you my start and my fade for each game. And then we're going to wrap it up with some listener questions. May also have some listener questions throughout the episode, so stay tuned for that. But let's get right into it. We're going to be going over starts, sits, sleepers, and busts starting off. First off, we're going to go into starts. I thank you guys for joining. And now let's go into some starts at the quarterback position. A start I like this week. It's Caleb Williams of the Chicago Bears. He is a top 10 quarterback for me this week. I currently have him at, I believe, QB9. Let's see here. QB8. Jaden Daniels, I'm expecting him to miss out. He's my QB9 right now, but it's looking more and more like Marcus Mariota is going to be the guy in Washington this week. And Caleb Williams, might be my start of the week. I haven't really decided that yet, but he's put up 20 plus points in week 1 and week 2, 26 in week 1, 20.9 in week 2. He's a QB9 in week 1, QB20 in week 2. He faces the Dallas defense who just let Russ cook all over that secondary in Dallas too, out of all places. And thank you guys for joining. And yeah, it's the third highest team total Chicago has in week 3, which is outrageous. I just think we see a Caleb Williams boom here because the Chicago Bears are at home. They need to make a statement after their start of 0-2. And what better way to do it than Ben Johnson's offense putting up a ton of points on this Dallas defense that struggled last week? And they should be without Deron Bland again, so that just helps Caleb Williams out even more. And you'll see in my wide receiver start, I like Rome Odunze as well, but Caleb Williams leads it off. I also like Dak Prescott this week. I think that game is going to be just a back and forth shootout. It currently is one, maybe the highest over under. So the over under right now is 50.5. That is the second highest on the week, tied with the game tonight, which it's looking like right now if someone scores here that might hit. The over under tonight was also 50.5. And then Monday night, 53.5 for Ravens versus the Lions. So I really like this spot for Dak and Caleb Williams. Really, a lot of the weapons on Dallas and Chicago. So make sure you're starting pretty much all the weapons this week in that game. My next start should be a virtual lock in all lineups, even daily fantasy lineups. It's Jordan Mason of the Minnesota Vikings. Aaron Jones to the IR, we heard earlier this week. Mason should see all the work in this one. They signed Cam Akers, a familiar face in Minnesota, but I don't expect him to make an impact. He is easily a top 12 running back this week. I have Jordan Mason, I believe RB7 right now. And yeah, I have him RB7, faces a Cincinnati defense that has struggled against running backs. 15 plus PPR points for Dylan Sampson, Travis Etienne, and Bashal Tutin versus the Bengals through the first 2 weeks. Last year, when Jordan Mason took over for Christian McCaffrey, he was RB6 through the first couple of weeks that he did that. And I don't see why this is any different. I think Jordan Mason is easily a top 10 running back this week. He will see all the touches. I expect 15 to 20 easily for PPR leagues and points. And I think you should be starting him. He might be my start of the week at the running back position. Um, yeah, I just like the spot. I was drafting Jordan Mason all off season. I was preaching to you guys that Aaron Jones just came off of the most carries in his career, the most touches in his career, and Jordan Mason, they got him for a reason, and this is why they got him. They got him as insurance for Aaron Jones in case he got injured, and to have that 1-2 punch of Jordan Mason and Aaron Jones. But now it's going to be the Jordan Mason show, so I am hoping he will shine. And then my wide receiver start of the week, as I mentioned earlier, it is Rome Odunze. Caleb and Rome are connecting all over the field this year. He's been a top 20 wide receiver in week 1 and week 2. He had 15 PPR points in week 1, 30 in week 2. I expect him to probably put 20 to 30 on the board against this Cowboys defense, who Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson torched last weekend. Ben Johnson, like I said, will be ready to torch this secondary. He will have a game plan in place, and Caleb needs to execute it. And I think he's going to connect with Rome Odunze, who this year they have formed a fabulous connection, growing after last year. And Rome Odunze, second year wide receiver, I think we are seeing a breakout happen right now. I thought it would be DJ Moore, and I was wrong. It's the Rome Odunze show now. Hopefully, DJ Moore does well this week. I expect him to. But Rome Odunze is looking like the true wide receiver one in this offense, and they're getting him the ball. And you're easily starting him this week as a wide receiver too. And set it and forget it. Rome Odunze should be locked in your lineups. Another player that should be locked in your lineups is Juwan Johnson, tight end 1 in week 1 and tight end 4 in week 2. Saints offense is playing fast and averaging over 70 plays a game. He saw 9+ targets in weeks 1 and 2. I think you're setting Juwan Johnson a favorite target for the young quarterback Spencer Rattler and forgetting it. And Juwan Johnson should be a lock in your lineup. I have him at tight end. Also, I forgot to mention Rome Odunze's rank. I'll go back to that. Juwan Johnson is my tight end 8. Rome Odunze, I believe, is my wide receiver 10 right now. And after the start section, I'm going to get into a couple of listener questions. They're coming in rapid fire, guys. Don't worry. I'll get to them here in a second. Yeah, I got Rome Odunze at wide receiver 10 this week and Juwan Johnson at tight end 8. Those are my 4 starts at the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end position. You can find all my starts, sits, sleepers, and busts on X every Saturday. They will be released for every game. You can scroll through the entire thread and find every single start, sit, sleeper, and bust. And you can also find my rankings. Just search BA Sports Podcast mailer page and it will pop up. You can pull up my rankings there. You can see right now I published the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, flex, defense, and kicker rankings. So this is the starts. Let's get into some listener questions, guys. Coming in. Here we go. All right. Bench 1, Garrett Wilson, Keenan Allen, DK Metcalf, or George Pickens. For me, it's going to be Keenan Allen on that one. Danny, Franklin or T. Higgins? It's going to be T. Higgins for me. Drop Shakir for Pearsall. Yes, Big Chungus. Do that immediately. I think Pearsall could break out this week. May or Penix? I am going Drake May this week. AJ Brown or Travis Etienne at flex. Give me Travis Etienne this week. And then start 1, Pearsall, Dobbins, and Hollywood. Give me Pearsall, Gavin, this week. Hopefully he breaks out. Hello, Presley. And Josh with another question. McMillan or Pickens at the flex? Tedero McMillan this week for me, Josh. Another question. Move Javante out of my flex in place for Kyron at running back and play Ladd or JMO at the flex. I don't like JMO this week. I would lean to playing Ladd, but I'm fine with Kyron and Javante. It depends if you want to drop in Joku for Troy Franklin. It depends on who your other tight ends are. Traded Jameson and Ibuka for Lad W. Could be. I think you did well on buying low on Lab McConkey. He's only faced divisional opponents the first 2 weeks. It's going to be another divisional opponent this week. Although the Broncos have not looked good, and I think that the Chargers could do really well this week. Oh yeah, great trade or great. I would definitely drop him if you need wide receiver help. Good acquisition of Juwan Johnson. He should be easily a start this week for you. Oh yeah, Mason. I would play Mason anywhere I can. It depends on who your running backs are. Mason is top 7 running back for me this week, Josh. All right, guys, we're gonna get into some sits, but yeah, Jordan Mason, Juwan Johnson, I would definitely play. Right now, let me make sure I have that rank correctly. I believe I have Jordan Mason over Tedero McMillan. Just gonna double check that. Yeah, I got Tedero McMillan at 29th overall. I have Jordan Mason at 14th overall. Dak Prescott, duh, Prescott's magic. You want an out of the box quarterback? I can throw one at you. Between Connor, T Mac, and Pollard, I would start T Mac in PPR leagues. All right, guys, those are some listener questions. Thanks to the TikTok audience. Let's get into some sits. And Bryce Young leads off this list. And I really like the Falcons defense if they're out there in your league. The Falcons are the highest defense in havoc rate. What is havoc rate? It is the percentage of plays a defense gets a pressure, tackle for loss, forced fumble, INT, or pass breakup. Credit to Ian on Twitter, on X. We saw this Falcons defense break out against the Vikings last week. The Falcons defense are currently sitting, like I said, highest havoc rate in the league, 48%. So on nearly half of their defensive plays, they get a pressure, tackle for loss, forced fumble, INT, or pass breakup. The two young pass rushers got home last week. Jalen Walker recorded a sack. James Pierce Jr. recorded a half sack. 6 sacks total last week for this Falcons defense. I think Bryce Young is in a world of trouble this week. But they're going to be having to pass the ball, I believe, and I think that helps Tedero McMillan in a trailing game script this week. So that's why I like Tedero McMillan this week. I've got him high. Um, and yeah, so that leads off the sits. Prescott's magic. Who's my favorite quarterback? It's Dak Prescott, of course. Go Cowboys. Start Pacheco or Dylan Sampson. I think you're going to have to roll with Pacheco this week. I think we're going to see a bounce back for Isaiah Pacheco this week. And if we don't, well, then that is just unfortunate. But if we do see a bounce back, I would try and trade high after a good week against the Giants this week of Pacheco because I don't want to have him rest of season. Start 3, Lad, BTJ, Odunze, and Wilson. I'm starting BTJ, Odunze, and Wilson on those. I would bench Lad. Hey, yeah, Prescott's Magic. Give me a follow. Go boys. I think Dak is the QB. Dak is my QB3 this week behind Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen for my week 3 fantasy rankings. I think Dak Prescott is going to ball on that Chicago secondary who's missing Jalen Johnson. I do believe in Tyrod Taylor. I think Tyrod Taylor helps Garrett Wilson actually, opposed to Justin Fields. I think they're going to have to pass more. Tyrod Taylor's getting old. He doesn't like to use his legs like Fields. So it also is going to help Breece Hall, I believe. But they're going to be having to come prepared against Tampa Bay. Pickens or Swift? Give me George Pickens, Harry. All right, guys, let's go. Keep going with the sits. I'm sitting Tyrone Tracy this week. Scottaboo looked like he was the better back last week. Kansas City's defense has been stout versus the run, and I don't trust the Giants' offense here after a great performance against the Cowboys last week. I really only trust Malik Neighbors to keep that continued. But Tyrone Tracy is a sit for me. I just think there are definitely better options out there that you can start. I don't like Tyrone Tracy. I don't like the Giants offense this week, except for Malik Neighbors. Malik Neighbors should be a set it and forget it. He has the potential to go off any week. And the Kansas City defense just has to get a win here. And they're going to come prepared, and they're not going to let Tyrone Tracy run the ball. They're going to try and lock down this Giants run game. I don't even know if Tyrone Tracy's going to be the guy that the Giants are going to lean on. It may be Cam Scatterboo. So if Cam Scatterboo is available in your league, I would definitely try and stash him. And another sit is Travis Hunter on my sit list. I can't start him until we see a better performance with him in this offense. They aren't using him as I want to see him be used. And that may just have to do with him being a rookie and just trying to get along slowly. But I just don't like how they're using him. BTJ isn't doing well either. It's not like one or the other is doing well. I still am gonna have to start BTJ this week, even though I know he's been disappointing. But for the league I have him in, I'm gonna have to start him, and he may get the Stingley shutdown as we saw last week. So I just can't trust Travis Hunter this week. Who knows how many offensive snaps he's actually gonna play? I would sit him until you feel comfortable about starting him, because I just don't feel comfortable about starting him. And I think you can start Troy Franklin over Travis Hunter this week if you really want to. Bills Mafia, baby. The Bills. Josh Allen forever. List Allen, Lamar, Prescott, Hurts, Mahomes. All right. Well, I'm going to go Josh Allen 1, Lamar 2, Mahomes 3, Dak 4, Jalen Hurts 5. Jalen Hurts shouldn't even be on that list. It should be Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert. Neighbors and Pickens for CD. I mean, that's probably a good trade in all honesty. Josh Allen over 213 and a half passing yards. He gets 213. Wow, Vegas is really watching out on that one. Someone phoned in. Who do I start? Ladd, Johnston, Worthy, or Olave at the flex? I would start. I don't know if Worthy's gonna play, but I would go with Ladd. I would go with Ladd for sure. Kelsey or Juwan Johnson. Give me Travis Kelsey this week. Sticking with him. Giants defense is abysmal. We saw last week Jake Ferguson did really well. I think Travis Kelsey too could do well. He's been performing well. He just needs to catch that ball, and people are not talking down on Travis Kelsey if he catches that ball and scores the touchdown. BTJ for Bucky and Pickens. I'd do it if you need a running back. I like Pickens rest of season, and BTJ is just, if you can get that package for BTJ, that's a W. Swift for Higgins and RJ Harvey. Yeah. If you wanna get rid of Swift and just hope that the RJ Harvey breakout is coming soon. All right, let's keep going with sits. Mark Andrews. I don't really want to call him a sit here because I think he's scoring this week. He's been targeted in the red zone. Now, if Isaiah Likely doesn't go, this worries me, this sick call, but this is Monday night, so you gotta call it before. He was a bust for me last week. Mark Andrews didn't do anything. I just don't think he's worth starting right now. And if Isaiah Likely actually is active, I really don't think he's worth starting. I would bench Mark Andrews if Isaiah Likely is deemed active. I just think you can probably get by with some better options out there. Now, if you can't and you have to start him, fine, go ahead. He could score this week. The over under is literally 53 and a half in that game, the highest total on the weekend. I would probably start Kyle Pitts, Harold Fannin, Zach Ertz, Jake Ferguson easily all over Mark Andrews this week. Mark Andrews is my tight end 13 behind Harold Fannin, Zach Ertz, Tucker Kraft, Juwan Johnson. And yeah, I just don't trust Mark Andrews until he starts seeing more targets, even though he is getting targeted in the end zone. And, if a tight end gets in the end zone, they're probably top 10 for the week. So this ranking of him at tight end 13 could be wrong if he does score, but I just don't see him getting as many targets as Jake Ferguson, Juwan Johnson, Harold Fannin. Those guys are getting a lot of volume. Zach Ertz, they're all getting a lot of volume. Now, I'm interested to see how Zach Ertz will do with Marcus Mariota at quarterback. It's not confirmed yet, but it's leaning that way that Marcus Mariota is going to be the active quarterback for them this week. So it's going to be interesting to see how Mariota will use Zach Ertz. Now, before we go into sleepers, let me go into a couple more listener questions. Here you go, guys. I'm going to answer a couple really quick. Kyler or May and Fannin or Hawkinson. I would go Drake May, and I would also go, as much as I want to say Hawkinson, I'm going to say Fannin. Hawkinson has a great matchup against Cincinnati. It's just, does Carson Wentz get him the ball? He could for sure. Keenan, Marv, or Olave. I would lean Marv this week. Judy or Diggs. I would go. Let me see what I have ranked. I don't. I don't want to go against my rankings, so give me a second. I'm pulling it up. Keenan Allen. I have Keenan Allen, wide receiver 33. I'd probably go Keenan Allen over. Well, actually, sorry, I read that wrong. Judy or Diggs. I would go Marv. I have Marv higher than Keenan Allen, Isaac. Judy or Diggs, I would probably go. Where is Jerry Judy? I don't even see Jerry Judy on here. I'll probably go Stephon Diggs. Cook for Irving, who wins? The Cook, whoever gets Cook is winning that trade. Pickens for Olave. Yeah, I like that trade. I think that should be a good one. Some dude offered me Jamar for McBride and Odunze. Don't do that. Keep McBride and Odunze. We're seeing an Odunze breakout this year. All right, guys, let's go into the sleepers of the week. It's going to be Aaron Rodgers at the quarterback position for me, leading it off. New England let Geno Smith and Tua go for 300 plus yards each. Now, they didn't post great quarterback numbers because they didn't really throw touchdowns, both QB 17 and QB 15. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be one to get into the end zone with the passes, and he could even go for 300 plus yards. He should be as efficient as he was in week one. I like Aaron Rodgers as a sleeper quarterback this week. I think he's definitely locked in your lineup as a QB2 in super flex leagues. And another sleeper I like this week is Isaiah Pacheco. Like I said, the Giants have not been able to stop the run in the first 2 weeks. We saw Jacory Krosky Merritt, or Bill, get 10 carries, 82 yards, and a touchdown in week one. He had a 42-yard long rush in week one. And then Javonte Williams last week, 18 carries, 97 yards, and a touchdown with a 20-yard long rush. I think that Isaiah Pacheco, if he gets the volume, they really haven't been able to run the ball. I think they just got to give him the carries. If he's not performing, then they're going to definitely try and run Kareem Hunt or Brashard Smith, and you might be in a world of trouble. But I do like Isaiah Pacheco this week. I think they do give him a chance. He just hasn't gotten it through the first 2 weeks. He's been limited. The run game's been limited. I think they have to get that going, and the Giants are the perfect team to get that going against, who have given up a lot of yards to running backs through the first 2 weeks. Wide receiver wise, my sleeper is Michael Pittman Jr. 18 plus PPR points have been given up to wide receivers this year by Tennessee. There's been 3 of them. It's been Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, and Cortland Sutton. Michael Pittman Jr. has 2 touchdowns in his last 2 games at Tennessee, 1 touchdown in each game. So he likes playing in Nashville, I guess. And I'm thinking he can get another touchdown in this one. And I think he could push to that 18 plus PPR point mark if he is indeed the number 1 wide receiver on this offense. I think Daniel Jones is going to be looking for him, and Michael Pittman can be his safety net. And yeah, I would be comfortable starting Michael Pittman as a wide receiver 3 or a flex this week. Harold Fannin Jr. is my sleeper tight end this week. He is a top 12 tight end for me this week. The Browns, one of the most popular ads in fantasy over the past 2 weeks. And he's been all over the field. He's been getting lined up, been getting a lot of targets. He's been getting lined up in the slot, out wide, in line, wildcat. I explained this all last week. He had a 72% snap rate in week 1. And let me see what his snap rate in week 2 is. snap rate for the NFL. And while I figure out his snap rate, let's read some questions off from the listeners. Justin Herbert or Jaden Daniels? It's going to be Justin Herbert. I don't know if Jaden Daniels is playing this week, so you got to be cautious about that. Ginty for Drake London. If you don't need a running back and want a wide receiver, then do that trade. Ginty for Drake London, I don't mind that. Would I trade Kyron Williams, Rashid Shaheed, Jerry Judy, Travion Henderson for Josh Jacobs and Puka? Yeah. If you don't need all that depth, I think easily I'd do that. Josh Jacobs is a safe running back that scores almost a touchdown a week, and Puka is getting a volume that is outrageous. It's only Puka and Devontae Adams right now in that offense for the Rams that are getting targets. So let's look up Harold Finnan's snap rate for week 2 was 63%. So it went down in week 2. But I think that that will increase as time goes on. Harold Fannin, I like him a lot this week. And he's got a great matchup this week. The Packers. If we look who exposed the Packers in week 1, it was Sam Laporta. And if we looked at who exposed the Packers in week 2, it was Zach Ertz. So this definitely helps Harold Fannin this week. I think they're going to use the tight end against this Green Bay defense who's been stout everywhere else. So he is my sleeper this week. Kraft, Strange, or Juwan Johnson. I would start Tucker Kraft if they deem him healthy. If he's not healthy and he's out, then I would go Juwan Johnson. And then let's see here. Trade Amon-Ra, Jordan Mason, and Judkins for Bijan and Ladd. I don't know if I'd do that. I'd rather have Jordan Mason and Amon-Ra. I like Wan'Dale Robinson. I worry about him this week, though. Would I trade K9 for Jordan Mason? No, I was high on K9 coming into the year, and I think he's going to do well this week if Zach Charbonnet actually is out and they have to give Kenneth Walker the majority of the touches. Zay Flowers or Alvin Kamara? Give me Zay Flowers this week. Prescott's Magic, congrats on the undefeated run. Let's go. Freaky Reek, does that mean Tyreek Hill, Jay? Flowers, Igbuka, or Kamara? I would go Zay Flowers. Quentin Johnston for Shakir or Ridley would be good. If you're talking about a trade or a lineup decision, I would definitely, yeah, I'd be fine with putting Quentin Johnston in your lineup over those two. And then Scottaboo or Travion Henderson rest of season. Travion Henderson. That should not even be a question. I think they're going to slowly work him in, but he's going to get worked in. Let's go into the busts now. Jared Goff was my sleeper of the week last week. He is 0-3 versus the Ravens, and he faces them on Monday night. He's lost 2019 with the Rams, 2021 with the Lions, 2023 with the Lions, and I think it is going to be 2025 with the Lions, and he's going to drop to 0-4 against the Ravens. His average stats against the Ravens defense are 237.7 yards passing, 0 touchdowns, and 1 interception per game. That is not what you want to see out of your QB1 going into Baltimore on Monday Night Football. I don't think Jared Goff performs this week, and I think you should sit him if you can. Likely you have someone ahead of him that you drafted, but if not, like I said, Aaron Rodgers should be out there. If he's not, then I would look. Let me see who I have ranked ahead of Jared Goff right now. I would look elsewhere, honestly. I think Jared Goff should be a sit this week. I've got him. I've got Aaron Rodgers. I might move Mac Jones ahead of Jared Goff. Jordan Love, Marcus Mariota might be an interesting play, although I don't know if I trust it. Caleb Williams, if he's somehow out there, go grab him. But there's got to be a better option than Jared Goff. Maybe Jake Browning is available in your league. Another guy that I have as a bust this week, I think it's Kyron Williams. He's been disappointing he's gotten double-digit fantasy points in the first 2 weeks, but the Philly defense has been tough against the run. The only game that they weren't tough was week 1 when their stud defensive tackle Jalen Carter went out after spitting on Dak Prescott. And Kyron hasn't been efficient. Corum looks like he might be taking more work away. 70-30 split might be a thing. And, McVay has talked high on Corum. So be careful with Kyron Williams. I think I am going to have to start him this week, although I don't really want to. And I just hope he gets into the end zone. Another guy that I'm a little worried about that has been worrisome the first 2 weeks, and he's now going against JC Horn. It's Drake London. Now, granted, last year, London against the Panthers with Penix, 10 catches, 187 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But that game, they didn't have JC Horn. And the game with JC Horn, he still posted 6 catches, 74 yards, and a touchdown. I just think that this secondary is honestly one of the better ones in the league just because teams aren't throwing as much as they're running the ball against this Panthers defense because the Panthers are just getting exposed on the ground game. And why on earth would the Falcons go away from Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier? I think they're going to lean on the run in this one. JC Horn worries me a little bit about Drake London. I just don't know if they're going to have the passing volume this week. If you can afford to sit London, do it. But in the places I drafted him, I am going to have to start him. I have him as a top 12 wide receiver this week. I think you might just have to start him, but it could be the JC Horn Island that we saw Marvin Harrison Jr. get last week, but this one is just honestly worrisome. If we don't see a performance out of Drake London here, I am going to hit the panic button times a million on this one. Jameson Williams is another bust that I have at the wide receiver position. Worried about Goff on the road. Like I said, he only averages 237 yards passing against the Ravens, no touchdowns, and 1 interception per game. And if you look at the home versus road splits last year for JMO did really good at home where he was last week, where I had him as a start last week. And he performed. He got a touchdown. He caught 100 something yards. I think it was like 108 yards. He got the job done for your fantasy team, but it's going to be a little worrisome this week against a better Ravens secondary and a team that Jared Goff just doesn't do well against. So Jameson Williams is on my bust list. I would try and sit him if you can. Evan Ingram is the last guy on my bust list, and he got outsnapped by Adam Troutman last week. It's hard to trust him. He was my top sit last week, so hopefully you listen to that because I put him as my top sit, and that worked out great. And now let's get into some daily fantasy targets, some fades, and then we'll dive into the games really quick. So, stack of the week, quarterback, wide receiver wise, is Caleb Williams to Rome Odunze and Dak Prescott to CeeDee Lamb. I think both of those are going to be viable stacks in the DFS leagues this week. Some cheap plays at the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end position. Quarterback, Marcus Mariota, if Jaden Daniels does not play. Running back, Jordan Mason should be a virtual lock in all lineups. Jordan Mason should be a lock in all fantasy lineups, regardless, daily fantasy, redraft, dynasty leagues. I mean, he's a top 10 running back this week. You should not be benching Jordan Mason. I think he's going to do really well this week. Wide receiver Rome Odunze is a cheap play. I think you can get him around 6,400 on FanDuel. And then wide receiver Michael Pittman Jr. is another cheap play that I like, and he is one of my sleepers this week. Tight end Harold Fannin Jr., another sleeper this week, is a cheap play on daily fantasy lineups on FanDuel. I believe he's around 5,200. And like I said, Sam Laporta and Zach Ertz both did really well against this Packers defense. They just can't seem to stop the tight end, but they seem to be stopping everything else. And then a fade at the cost, Drake London. I just am unsure what's going to happen this week, and I rather would not play him in a FanDuel lineup, in a DraftKings lineup, in daily fantasy at all. I would rather play someone else. So try and avoid Drake London in daily fantasy this week. Now, if he pops off, that's fine. I just think CeeDee Lamb's out there. You got Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson, Rome Odunze, Jordan Mason. There's plenty of better options out there, I think, than Drake London. So Let's get into these games after some questions from the listeners. Let's see what you guys got. Starting off, we're gonna do Drake London for Jason and Tet McMillan. If you need wide receiver depth, I think that's a good trade. I like Jason. Honestly, rest of season, Tet McMillan could do really well. I would do that trade. Start one, Judkins, Johnston, Golden, Charbonnet. Charbonnet hasn't practiced the past 2 days, so be cautious about that. Judkins, I'm not starting. It'd be between Johnston and Golden for me, and I'm leaning Johnston right now. Just traded Gibbs for Puka and traded Evans for Nico. I like that a lot, Sergio. Should be a good one. Hampton, Golden, Franklin, and Hunt. I would start Matthew Golden. Start Fannin or MHJ. If it's a PPR league, I'm going MHJ. Hampton. All right. Give me 1 second. Traded Chuba and Smith for Tyler Warren and Pollard. What Smith? Devontae Smith? Um, I would assume that might be Devontae Smith. Who should I start at flex? Pickens, Golden, Hampton, or Chase Brown? I would start Chase Brown at the flex. Yeah, Devontae Smith and Chuba for. I don't really like Tony Pollard. I would rather keep Chuba and Devontae Smith, unless you really need a tight end and want to go after Tyler Warren. I just don't think it's worth it. Start DJ or Debo. Hmm. Give me DJ Moore against the Cowboys defense. All right, guys, let's get into some games. So, Green Bay at Cleveland is the first game. Green Bay is favored by 7.5. Over under is 41.5. I think Green Bay goes into Cleveland and should get the win here to go to 3-0. Harold Fannin Jr. is my start, and then my fade is all Cleveland running backs. This Green Bay Packers defense has been pretty good against the run, and I think they're going to stay good here. And I think the only way to expose the Packers defense is through the tight ends. We saw last week, Jacory Krosky Merrick got shut down. Austin Eckler didn't really do much. And then the week prior, Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery didn't do much either. So I just don't trust the Cleveland running back this week, even though that kind of is what Cleveland does, is lean on the ground game. I think the Packers know that, and they're just going to be able to win with their front seven. Their linebackers have been playing outstanding. I just don't like the Cleveland running backs this week, and I'm fading really all of them. The next game is Indianapolis at Tennessee. Indianapolis is favored 4.5 points. Over unders 43.5. I think this could be a sneaky trap game for the Indianapolis Colts. They're 2-0, played the first two games at home in the dome. They have to go into Tennessee, into Nashville in an outdoor environment. I would start Tony Pollard and I would fade Cam Ward. I think they're going to try and lean on the ground game in this one. So Cam Ward just hasn't been performing. That's why I'm fading him. Unless he gets back on track here, which I mean, he very well could at home. I think Tennessee has the potential to upset Indianapolis, and I'm a little intrigued by this line 4.5. I think I might take Tennessee plus 4.5. I think Tennessee, we saw them do really well against the Broncos, and then we saw Indianapolis last week barely get a win over the Broncos. So both these teams played the Broncos close. I think this one is going to be closer than people expect at Tennessee. I think Cam Ward in the offense gets rolling, but I'm not comfortable starting Cam Ward fantasy-wise in this matchup, so I'm fading him. Cincinnati at Minnesota. Minnesota's favored -2.5. Over under is 41.5. We've got the battle of the backup quarterbacks here. Carson Wentz against Jake Browning. My start for this game, no surprise, Jordan Mason. My fade this game is T. Higgins. I think it's going to be the Jamar Chase and Chase Brown show for Jake Browning on the offensive side of the ball. And I don't know who wins this game. I don't think Cincinnati goes into Minnesota and can get the win. I think Minnesota should handle business at home. We just have to see how Carson Wentz actually performs in Minnesota. And I mean, Kevin O'Connell, QB whisperer. We didn't expect this from Sam Darnold last year, and we could see Carson Wentz do really well. So that would be an interesting sight to see, but I think Minnesota should take care of business and beat the Bengals in this one. Pittsburgh at New England. Pittsburgh's favored by 1.5. Over under is 44.5. DK Metcalf is a start for me, and a fade for me might be, this one's tough. I'm just going to fade all of the Patriots pass catchers because I'm not sure which one's going to actually get the ball. So I don't feel comfortable starting any of them. Like one week it's Booty. I would definitely feel the most comfortable starting Diggs if he hadn't played like 50 or 60% of the snaps in week 1 and week 2. So Stephon Diggs, 41% of the snaps in week 1, 52% of the snaps in week 2. Think they're slowly ramping Diggs up. And once Diggs gets up to, say, 70, 80, 90% of the snaps, he's going to see a lot of targets. He's already seeing a ton of targets, and he's barely playing half the snaps in the first 2 weeks. So over this coming couple of weeks, we could see Stephon Diggs develop into a pretty good wide receiver 3 flex play. But this week, I'm fading the pass catchers in New England if I can, and start DK Metcalf. I think Pittsburgh should go in and handle business with Aaron Rodgers. I think Aaron Rodgers gets the win for them in New England. The Rams against the Eagles, next up on the list. Philadelphia is favored by 3.5. Over under is 44.5. I would start Devontae Smith and I would fade Kyren Williams. Talked about Kyren earlier. I'm not a huge fan of this. This Philadelphia passing game is going to have to get back on track. I think Devontae Smith and AJ Brown can help do that this week. Just depends. Can the offensive coordinator actually call the plays for Jalen Hurts and the offense to pass the ball down the field? The Rams have been pretty good against the run, so I'm wondering if Saquon Barkley just doesn't get going, that they have to start leaning on the pass, and how's it going to look? I don't know. Jalen Hurts barely threw for 100 yards last week. They really just didn't need to throw the ball. So I don't think that's going to happen this week. You know, Saquon last year had some pretty good games against the Rams, broke off a couple of long runs. I think the Rams want to get revenge after their loss to the Eagles last year. And I would too. Um, Kyron Williams probably not going to do it. I think it's going to be Devontae Adams and Puka Nakua along with Matthew Stafford. So there it is. I'm going to get into some questions from the listeners before we go into the Jets at the Bucks as the next game up on the slate. Marvin Harrison for J.K. Dobbins, solid. Are you getting Marvin Harrison? I wouldn't trade for J.K. Dobbins unless you really need a running back too injury prone. Trade away J.K. Dobbins for Devontae Adams. I would do that in a heartbeat. Wan'Dale Robinson or Juwan Johnson for the flex. I would go with Juwan Johnson, Carter. Flex Jacoby Myers or Jalen Warren. Jalen Warren for me, J-Bone. Trade away Debo for A.J. Brown. If you can afford it, Brian, I would do that. A.J. Brown is a buy low candidate for sure. Trade Tyreek for A.J. Brown. If you can get rid of Tyreek and get A.J. Brown, I would do that. Garrett Wilson for BTJ. Yeah, I like buying low on BTJ. K9 or Pittman. Give me Kenneth Walker this week. Colby, I think he's going to do well this week. Flex Kelsey, Sutton, or Keenan Allen. Adam, I'm going to have to go with Sutton on that one. I think he bounces back. Keeper Selleck Buka. Dyer, I would probably try and sell him if you can get a good package for him, but don't go cheap with the make sure you get a good player for Buka if you're going to trade him right now. His value is definitely pretty high. Thanks for all these questions, guys. Keep them coming. Colby, if you can afford to have Rashee Rice on your bench for the next 4 weeks until he comes back, I would do that. Depends on how deep your wide receiver core is. You're 2-0, yeah, that could be viable, but would you be 2-4 or would you be like 3-3 if you do this? I know Ladd hasn't really done much. So if you're 2-0, your team's obviously performing elsewhere besides Ladd McConkey. So I wouldn't mind that. I like if you're 2-0 right now, definitely try and target Rashee Rice. All right, guys, gonna wrap these up real quick. We're gonna go with the Jets at the Bucks. Start Bucky Irving, fade Brees Hall. Tampa Bay is favored by 6.5. Over unders 43.5. Um, the Bucks run defense has just been money over the first 2 weeks, and they were money last year with Vita Vea in the middle. It clogs up a lot of space, and teams can't get the ball running. We saw Nick Chubb break one last week, but that was kind of like let him score so we can go drive down the field and win the game with Baker Mayfield. So I'd be cautious about starting Brees Hall this week, but I know many people will have to start him. So he's just lower. He's probably a low end RB2 for me this week. But he is in that RB2 range, low end RB2. Las Vegas at Washington. Washington's favored by 3.5. Over unders 44.5. I don't know if this line shifted since I got this info, but I would start Debo or Zach Ertz. I'm a little worried that Jane Daniels actually isn't going to play. I'm going to fade Geno Smith in this one. And I think Genty, this could be a game where Genty gets going. Um, I think Washington should sneak away with the win. Now, if Jane Daniels ends up not playing, it might be a tighter line than this, and Vegas could definitely push at Washington. But this is a game where I don't think they have to start Jane Daniels. Like you can rely on everyone else. You don't need him getting hurt. Save him for later in the year. And the next game up, Atlanta at Carolina. I really like Atlanta in this spot. They're favored by 5.5 going on the road at Carolina. Over under is 43.5. I would start Darnell Mooney and I would fade Bryce Young this week. I just think the Falcons defense is really good. Now they're going to probably get garbage time points. He's going to pepper Tet McMillan with targets. So I think you're starting Tet McMillan, but I would not be comfortable starting Bryce Young in fantasy this week. He is a fade for me. Houston at Jacksonville. Jacksonville's favored by 1.5. Over under is 44.5. I would start Travis Etienne and fade Travis Hunter. And I think Jacksonville wins this game. I think we could see, hopefully, BTJ gets going in this one. I really hope so. It's going to be the Derek Stingley show on him. So hopefully Liam Cohen can do a good job of moving Brian Thomas Jr. around to get him open. But Derek Stingley, I don't know if he's going to follow him everywhere or what, but we saw that last week with Mike Evans a little bit, and we saw it in week 1 as well with Drake London. Or not Drake London. Who did Houston play in week 1? Oh, with Devontae Adams, I think. Devontae Adams in week 1. I think Derek Stingley was traveling with him, and then we saw Puka go off. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that is my start and fade. Start ETN, fade Travis Hunter. Denver at the Chargers. LAC is favored by 2.5. Over unders 45.5. I think you're starting Cortland Sutton, and I'm fading Evan Ingram in this one. So not really doing it. I think if you have Evan Ingram, definitely look and see who's available out there. Maybe Harold Fannon's out there. Maybe Jake Ferguson's out there. Highly doubt it, but there's always hope if you just look and see who's out there. I just find it so hard to start Evan Ingram right now. I mean, let's see, last week, what his snap count was. Because I don't think, I'm pretty sure he got like less than 50% of the snaps, but I could be wrong about that. Let's see here. Yeah, 43% of the snaps for Evan Ingram and then 62% of the snaps for Adam Troutman. Adam Troutman's been out snapping Evan Ingram the first 2 weeks. Now we saw an increase 34% of the snaps in week 1 for Evan Ingram, 43% in week 2. Does that increase a little more? I don't know, but I don't trust it. So I'm fading him this week. New Orleans at Seattle. This is one I want to talk about because Seattle's favored by 7.5. They're at home. Over unders 41.5. Kenneth Walker is my start, and Zach Charbonnet has not practiced the past 2 days. So I think we could see, if Zach Charbonnet ends up not playing, we could see Kenneth Walker get 20 to 25 touches in this one. And it's just full on the Kenneth Walker show, and he performs, and he's a top 10 running back this week. I would love to see that. I was so high on him this offseason. He was very efficient last week as a runner. Zach Charbonnet, not so much. I think you're starting Kenneth Walker anywhere and everywhere you have him this week. And then I'm fading Chris Olave this week at Seattle. Their secondary is a little tough. I'd feel much more comfortable starting Juwan Johnson this week than Chris Olave. All right. We got 4 games left, and then we'll wrap it up with some listener questions. Dallas at Chicago. Dallas is favored by 1.5. Over under is 50.5. Start Romo Dunze, Fade, Colston, Loveland. I just don't think Loveland's getting enough work. Now, they did say they want to get the tight ends involved. So if you can stash Loveland on the end of your bench, I would do that until further notice. I'm not starting him. Arizona at San Francisco. San Francisco's favored by 2.5. Over under is 45.5. Mac Jones looks to be the quarterback this week yet again. I would be comfortable with starting Ricky Pearsall this week, though. The Arizona secondary is a little banged up. I don't know if they're going to get fully healthy this week. And I think Ricky Pearsall could see a breakout game here at home. And then I'm fading James Conner against this San Francisco defense. Trey Benson's just looked like the better back and more efficient back. I'm wondering if they give him more touches. I'm a little worried about James Conner, and I'm not really trying to play him this week. Kansas City at the Giants. I'm starting Isaiah Pacheco this week, fading Russell Wilson, fading Tyrone Tracy. Kansas City's favorite 6.5. Over unders 45.5. I think this is the game where Kansas City makes a statement. Isaiah Pacheco also returning to the state of New York, where he attended Rutgers University. So that is also why I like him. I think they're going to have to give him an opportunity to show himself off in front of the home crowd in New York, kind of a reunion for where he played college ball. So I like Isaiah Pacheco this week as a sleeper. Detroit at Baltimore. I'm starting Zay Flowers. Baltimore's favored by -4.5. Over unders 53.5. I think they're going to get Zay Flowers involved. This could be a Zay Flowers breakout year. I mean, he did really well last year. The touchdowns were just not there last year. We're seeing the touchdowns hit this year, though. I'm fading Jared Goff in this one. Like I said earlier, just not a fan of his stats against Baltimore, especially going into Baltimore. And Jared Goff just could struggle in this spot. I think they're going to have to try and get the run game going. The only way I can see Jared Goff doing well is the dump offs to Jahmyr Gibbs, which Baltimore likes to do. They like to give up a lot of dump offs to pass catching backs. So I think Jahmyr Gibbs is a good play this week and should do well. Let's wrap this up with some listener questions really quick for about the next couple of minutes. And then we will wrap this one up and get out of here. Benched Allen, Hill, and Cook. Well, I don't know why you did that. Tootin or Judkins off waivers. I am going for Tootin off waivers. Wandale, Higgins, or Worthy this week. Um, I don't know if Worthy plays. If Worthy plays, I would say Worthy. If Worthy does not play, I would say Higgins. Odunze or Flowers this week. I'm going Odunze this week. Start Caleb or Drake. I'm going Caleb Williams this week. Rider on that one. Caleb Williams is a top 8 quarterback for me this week. Romo Dunze is a top 10 wide receiver for me this week. I think they do well against the Dallas secondary. Mike Evans or George Pickens this week. I would lean Mike Evans. Especially if Ibuka doesn't go, they're going to have to try and target Mike Evans. Wandale or Ladd. Give me Ladd this week. I don't even know if I was watching when they did that, but that's hilarious. Benching Neighbors this week for Ibuka. Well, that's just the dumbest call I've ever heard. Justin Herbert or Jared Goff this week? Justin Herbert. Jared Goff, I just spent like the last 30 minutes ripping on him about 2 or 3 times. Cooper Kupp or Cortland Sutton, who do I start? I think it's Cortland Sutton this week. I've got Cortland Sutton, wide receiver 25. I've got Cooper Kupp, wide receiver 30. Wide receiver 41. Evans has been slacking. Evans or Johnston or Debo. Well, if Igbuka's out, I think Evans gets it going this week. So I would still lean Mike Evans, but Debo Samuel. Actually, Debo Samuel could be a close second just because Debo's been looking fantastic. So if you want to do that, I'm fine with it. Travion, Juwan Johnson, or Ridley in the flex. I'd have to go with Juwan Johnson for the floor, Travion for the ceiling, but it's a little more risky. I would say if you want to play it safe, go Juwan Johnson, AJ Brown, or Nico Collins. I'm starting Nico Collins. Kevin, I saw that too. Kyron or Connor. I would go Kyron Williams. Start one, T. Higgins, Cooper Kupp, Cortland Sutton, or Stephon Diggs. Cortland Sutton and T. Higgins. Or I would start one, Cortland Sutton. Trade Genty, Kenneth Walker, Jacoby Myers for Amarian Henderson and Harrison. PPR. Um, yeah, if you have trust in those rookie running backs, I just like Kenneth Walker if that's the Walker you're talking about. Ioman or Troy Franklin at flex. I would go. I think I'm going to lean Iomanor this week. Yeah, I'm going to lean Iomanor. All right, guys. Any last questions? If you have any questions, please send them on X at BA Sports Podcast. I'll answer them on there. Should I start Bill, Krosky, Merritt, Francisco? I think you should. Why do you think Olave is ranked so low considering his target share is huge? I think it's because the Seattle secondary is just really, really good, and the Seattle defense is going to limit him. Caleb Williams, Dak, or Justin Herbert. Give me Dak this week, Mason. Is K9 a start at flex? Kevin? Yeah, he is. He's a start at an RB2 position, especially if Zach Charbonnet doesn't play. Monty versus the Ravens or Pittman versus the Titans? Give me Pittman versus the Titans. Trade away CMC for Breece Hall and Drake London. Yeah, Benjamin, I'd do that if you do need a wide receiver too. I would do that. I like buying low on Drake London, although if he doesn't perform this week, I'm going to be a little worried. All right, guys. Thank you all for listening to the BA Sports Podcast. We are wrapping it up here. Just answered some listener questions, went around the league game by game, starts and fades, some daily fantasy targets and fades, some stacks, some sleepers, breakouts, and busts. Or sorry, we went over start, sit, sleepers, and busts. Then we went over DFS targets and fades. Then we went around the league through every game, giving a start and fade for every game. Listener questions throughout the episode. If you guys are listening on the audio side, thank you for listening. Hit that 5-star and give us a review, and we'll answer your question. If you leave a review on any podcast platform, Apple, Spotify, or Amazon Music, wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're listening on or watching on Twitter, X, or YouTube, thank you for your support, and thank you for TikTok for all the fun questions you guys have provided throughout this episode. We will be live Sunday morning answering start sit questions, so follow us on TikTok at BA Sports Podcast. We'll be live Sunday morning answering questions. Have a great weekend and get a win in week 3. Thank you guys for listening to the BA Sports Podcast.